I like sword fighting games. I like player versus player sword fighting games. I like VR sword fighting games. But when you combine all three of these things, for some reason they just kinda suck. Let me explain. There are 3 VR games to my knowledge that offer PvP melee combat. However, I'm gonna only be talking about 2 of them, because I'm saving this one for 2 reasons. 1, it fits more into another video that might come out eventually. Reason 2, I can't really play the game. I don't know if it's an issue with the game itself, or the lack of players, but I'm gonna go with the latter. The first game I ever played in this genre was Swords of Gurrah. I think that's how you pronounce that. It's certainly a unique game when it comes to both a VR game and just a game itself. The game features multiple game modes, so you're not exactly stuck fighting just one opponent. However, due to the game's lack of players, I was stuck fighting one opponent. The game's combat isn't necessarily what I would call realistic. Whenever you hit your opponent, your blade breaks, and you have to give it a moment to recharge. If you want to block or parry the opponent's attack, you can harden your blade by holding down the trigger. This causes it to break anything it touches, but it can't do damage to people. So in a duel, you pretty much come down to 2 options. Either hit your opponent before they know what happened, or break their blade, then break them. One thing these games do have in common is the very wide variety of weapons. In Gurrah, you have things like small daggers, swords, great swords, spears, glaives, and even throwing weapons. Some of these weapons are really easy to use and easy for beginners. Some take a bit more skill, and others outright suck. But that's less of a game fault and more of just a weapon design fault. For example, if you're playing one of the team-based game modes, I really would be surprised if someone were to play the entire game with nothing but a dagger. Speaking of playing against ink, you will quickly notice that ping does make a difference. If you ever played Mordhau or Chivalry on a European server from the US, you kinda get what I'm saying. Now, despite what I said at the beginning of this video, this game doesn't suck, it's just kinda janky. The game was made by what seems to be a pretty small dev team, and they only charge you $15 for it. If you and your friends are looking for a new VR game to try out, I would definitely recommend picking up the game. It can be really fun if you have a group of people to play it with.
Get away from me, you little rodent!
But if you're looking for something more duel focused, let me show you something.
Oh man, I tried to do it!
Now this might look like a little bit of a visual assault. You might be asking yourself, why is all the metal stuff so bright? It's almost like the iron is made out of light. Well, welcome to Ironlights. Probably my favorite VR melee combat PvP game. You know, out of the 3. Easily one of the most satisfying VR melee combat games in general. The way your weapons move, sound, and feel all just is right. Obviously, just like the last game, this one isn't very realistic. And I'm just gonna, spoil this real quick, just get this out of the way. There really is no Blade and Sorcery multiplayer yet. Okay, ignore this for now, you know what I mean. Let me explain how this game works, because it's not exactly the same as Swords of Gurrah. In a way, this game is turn-based. Each player has 2 bars. Health represented by orange, and power represented by blue. I think you can guess what health does, so I'm not going to explain that. But managing your power is very important. Your power is what allows you to initiate combat with an enemy. If you initiate combat with your opponent, then your opponent cannot fight back. All they can do is block. And on the subject of blocking, it's kinda similar to Swords of Gurrah, only instead of having a hardening ability, you just put it behind your back to recharge it every time it's hit. Power is also used for your ranged attacks, which range from reasonable, a little bit silly, and I will kill you if you use this in a ranked match. Granted, you may have a hard time finding anyone to troll with the flail, seeing how the game's player numbers are also pretty low, just like every other game in this genre. Not really a fault of the quality of the games, more of a fault of just indie VR game being kind of a hard thing to sell. But with Ironlights, luckily you don't really need a second player. The game features a whole campaign for every single class in the game, and it's kind of fun. On top of that, the game features an in-game tool for making your own enemies, allowing you to pick their look, weapons, and record your movements in-game to animate them. On top of the game's normal classes, the custom mode allows you to get very creative with your loadouts. Overall, if you have 20 bucks, I would say it's a pretty good purchase. It's certainly unique for a VR game. And if you have someone you want to duel, tell them to pick it up too, it's pretty fun. Now let me give a really quick explanation of why I'm not covering Deus Vult. Despite me having an issue where I can't actually play the game, I want to dedicate it to its own video covering the developers of the game, Raptor Lab. Despite the jankiness of their games, they are able to make games that stand out among everything else when it comes to VR. Standout is still seen as one of the first VR Battle Royale games. Gang V or Gang 5 or whatever you want to call it is a pretty alright attempt at making GTA 5 in VR. And Wardust is a ton of fun, and thanks to Habby actually has players again. If there's anything I'll show you about Deus Vult right now, is that it is home to the world's most EP kitten. I do want to make a video talking about the entire genre of VR melee combat games at some point, but I wanted to get multiplayer games into their own videos, seeing how niche of a genre they are. Though it might not be that video, I'm gonna try and get one more video out this year. I mean, oh my god, I have 2 days left. Okay. As always, I'm Manicvirus, and I will see you next time I feel like uploading. But with Ironlights, you're not exactly needed. That just sounded mean.